My name is Rebecca, and I am 30 years old. For a long time, I have been struggling with a complex family environment. It all began when I was 20 years old. At that time, I was a lively and hopeful second-year college student, majoring in psychology. Inspired by a therapist who supported me after the loss of my father during my childhood, I had set myself a high goal to become a clinical psychologist. My academic life was flourishing, and I was blessed with good friends. I enjoyed spending time with my peers and even had plans to study abroad the following year. However, everything changed when my 52-year-old mother, Helen, became unable to continue her work due to a severe chronic illness. The illness caused damage to her joints and muscles, subjecting her to constant pain and gradually limiting her mobility. Doctors informed us that there was no fundamental treatment for her progressive disease. At that time, my younger sister, Sarah, was only 15 years old and a high school student. She was full of typical teenage rebelliousness, spending her days in a moody state and immersing herself in video games. Our father had died in a traffic accident when Sarah was still an infant. Since then, our family of 3 had been supporting each other. Our mother had supported our household as a legal secretary, but with the onset of her illness, she could no longer continue working. As her condition worsened, I felt a strong responsibility to support our family. Sitting in my small dorm room, facing a desk scattered with psychology textbooks, I realized that I had to give up the dreams I had envisioned. It was not an easy decision to make. However, there were no other realistic options available. My mother needed regular care and treatment, and it was too much to expect Sarah to take on such responsibilities at her young age. The day I went to the administrative office to withdraw from college is still etched in my memory. My advisor tried earnestly to persuade me to stay, suggesting part-time attendance or taking a leave of absence, but I knew those options would not suffice to support our household financially. Our family urgently needed economic support, and there was no time to wait. At the age of 20, I dropped out of college and started working full-time. My first job was as a receptionist at a small local accounting firm. Although the salary was modest, it was stable, and by moving back home to live with my mother and Sarah, we could save on rent. The first few months were incredibly tough. I had left behind the stimulating lectures and study groups I had in college for a routine of answering phones and doing clerical work. In the evenings, I would support my mother's rehabilitation and ensure that Sarah did not fall behind in her studies. At night, I often questioned whether my decision was the right one, but I always managed to motivate myself and chose to move forward. I once believed that a day would come when my mother's condition would stabilize, Sarah would grow independent, and I could return to school. Even as that hope faded over time, I could not let go of the possibility. As years passed, the dream seemed increasingly distant, but I continued to hold on to hope while facing reality. I started as a receptionist, but eventually was promoted to an administrative position, which slightly increased my salary, allowing me to cover our family's living expenses and my mother's medical costs. I made sure Sarah had everything she needed for school, including supplies, clothes, and funds for field trips. I was filled with the desire to provide her with the opportunities I had given up on. Thanks to my efforts, Sarah was able to graduate from high school with scholarships and support paved for her way to college. I was incredibly proud of her. It was a joy to know that at least one member of our family would achieve a degree. The moment she received her acceptance letter and tears of happiness spilled over. I took her to an ice cream shop to celebrate, just as my parents had done for me when I had performed well in school as a child. During that time, I had temporarily sealed away my dreams, given up on furthering my education, and sacrificed travel plans and personal time to dedicate myself entirely to caring for my mother and supporting Sarah. I was exhausted, but I kept telling myself, this is for the sake of the family. It was hard not to feel envious or dissatisfied when I saw posts from my college friends about their successful careers and vibrant new lives on social media. However, there were moments of joy, such as when my mother had a good day and we could enjoy old movies together. or when Sarah called from college, happily sharing her good grades and stories of new friends. These events made me feel that the efforts and sacrifices I had made were not in vain. Over time, however, I increasingly felt unappreciated, and it seemed as if my struggles were being taken for granted. Although my mother's condition was stabilizing, she still required a lot of care. She often lamented how difficult her life was, but rarely mentioned the efforts and sacrifices I had made. Sometimes she would say harsh things like, "You should be doing better, or other daughters would do more for their parents." These words hurt, but I pretended not to care. Meanwhile, Sarah's attitude changed significantly after she started college life. Initially, she would call weekly, excitedly talking about her classes and campus events. However, the frequency of her calls gradually decreased. Now, she mostly contacted us when she needed financial support or specific help, and she seldom asked about our mother or me. When I look at Sarah's social media, I see her enjoying time with her new college friends and pictures from spring break trips that are far beyond my reach. Every time I saw that, I felt the gap between us widen even more, and I was utterly clueless about how to bridge that distance. Even when Sarah returned home for vacations, she spent most of her time with her high school friends and showed little interest in our mother or me at home. However, a turning point came last week when Sarah graduated from college. Despite everything, I was genuinely happy for her success and filled with pride. I had been preparing for months and decided to gift her a simple yet high-quality watch for her graduation. It was not flashy, but I thought it would be suitable for job interviews. Remembering the thrill I felt when my father gave me my first watch at 16, I wanted Sarah to experience that special moment too. The graduation ceremony was emotional, and I was moved to tears as Sarah walked across the stage to receive her diploma. However, at the graduation party that followed, my mother and I were treated as mere background elements. Sarah spent most of her time with her college friends and her new, stylish boyfriend, Wesley. Wesley's cold glances made us feel like unwelcome intruders. When I approached Sarah to give her the gift, she dismissed me, saying she was too busy. I stood there, holding the present, feeling incredibly awkward and saddened. Holding back tears, I quietly sat in a corner of the party. That's when I overheard Sarah talking with Wesley. She was telling a group of friends how embarrassed she was by her family and how eager she was to move out and start a new job. She said she was tired of us dragging her down and planned never to contact us again once she left home. I was shocked and pained to hear such cold words from my sister, whom I had loved and supported at the expense of my own life. Remembering all the nights I helped with her homework or gave her money for college instead of spending it on new clothes or hairstyles for myself, a rush of indescribable feelings overwhelmed me. That's how she really felt about us. The next day, I confronted her about her words. Hoping for an apology, I was instead met with harsh criticism. She said it was pathetic that I had sacrificed my life for our mother and that she never asked for that. She accused me of being jealous of her success and trying to make her feel guilty. During our argument, our mother, far from defending me, claimed I was being dramatic. She said I should just let Sarah be and be happy for her. At 30, with no degree and a stagnant job, caring for an unappreciative mother and a sister who despised me, I felt my youth slipping away. I was seriously thinking that I needed to find somewhere new to rediscover myself and spend some time focusing on my own needs. Yet, I felt guilty about the thought of abandoning my mother without any support, especially if her health worsened. But as these thoughts haunted me, I realized I needed to properly communicate my feelings to my mother and Sarah. I rehearsed what I wanted to say over and over in my head, carefully choosing words that wouldn't sound accusatory. I invited Sarah over to try and reconcile. I suggested we go out for dinner together, and although she agreed reluctantly, I spent the day cleaning the house and making our mother's favorite lasagna, hoping for a moment of family warmth that might soften everyone's hearts. However, the evening quickly turned for the worse. Our mother started by accusing me of trying to make her feel guilty for being sick. "I never asked you to quit college." It was your own choice, wasn't it? Do you think I wanted to mess up your life by getting sick?" she continued, and then brought up how she had cared for her sick father for years without complaining. I tried to explain that I wasn't blaming her, just wanting to express my gratitude, but she wouldn't listen. Sarah mostly kept silent, saying I was being too sensitive and she didn't mean it that way. But the look on her face made it clear she was serious about what she had said. She began to talk about her achievements, her degree, job offers, and plans to move to the city. Looking at me, she said, "What have you done? You're almost 30, still living at home, working as a secretary." At that moment, I couldn't hold back my tears and sobbed as I told her how much she had hurt me. I asked why she treated everything like it was my fault. Our mother accused me of trying to create a conflict with Sarah. I said, "From now on, I won't help you at all, and I don't feel the need to be involved. I don't have to sacrifice myself to protect you anymore." They reacted to my statement as if I was acting like I was the only one suffering, saying, "Don't talk like that," to which I replied, "Looking back over these 9 years, my life has been miserable." It was then that I felt there was no reason for me to stay. Holding back tears, I walked out of the house. I have never felt such a tightness in my chest before. I am currently staying at my best friend Vanessa's house, pondering my next steps. Vanessa has been my friend since high school and is one of the few friends I've managed to keep in touch with over the years. She has always been on my side. Feeling guilty, I considered returning home, but then my mother started talking about how ungrateful I am. That was the decisive moment. I have ended all financial support for them, and I told my mother that I needed to leave home and have some time for myself. She tried to make me feel guilty by saying her health would worsen if I left, but I firmly resolved to leave. I suggested other solutions, such as hiring home care or asking my sister to help, but she refused, saying she couldn't trust anyone else. Afterwards, she sent me messages alternating between blaming me and begging me to come home. I have now blocked her number. I haven't heard from Sarah at all. Vanessa's apartment isn't large, but she has offered me a place to stay. It feels strange to have free time in the evenings without having to rush home to check on my mother or do household chores. I am still getting used to this quiet. I no longer have to worry about my mother calling for help. Finding myself again, not just as a caregiver, is still a bit difficult, but I am beginning to feel hopeful about my future for the first time in a long while. It has been a month since I left home. Living with Vanessa felt like a fresh breeze, and she has been a great support. With the savings I had accumulated over the years, I decided to enroll in community college. I am currently taking an introductory psychology class and an English writing class. Returning to school and studying again feels indescribably good. When I attended class for the first time in years, I was filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Having not been in school for a long time, I was worried about being the oldest in the class and whether I could keep up, but my worries were unfounded. There were several other adult students near my age in the class, and some were even older than me. Balancing household duties, work, and school has been very challenging, but social life in this new environment is a different kind of stress than I've experienced before. This stress feels like it's not just about surviving, but about growing. I have also started therapy to sort out my feelings about my family. Talking to a third party has been very beneficial. She has taught me how to set boundaries and increase my self-esteem. We have explored why I felt it was natural to sacrifice myself. Last week, I ran into my mother's sister, Lynn, at the supermarket. I have always been close to Lynn, and she has been like a second mother to me. She asked why I wasn't answering my mother's calls. I briefly explained my current situation. There are moments when I feel relieved that not all the burdens fall on me alone, especially since I had some support from work and family. One day, my aunt called me to a nearby cafe for an important talk. "Rebecca, our relatives all know how much you've sacrificed for your mother and Sarah over the years. You dropped out of college at 20 and have supported the family ever since. I want to help you." My aunt decided to give me part of her inheritance. After various procedures, I received $50,000. This unexpected support has opened up great possibilities for my new life. But what pleased me more was that my decade-long efforts were finally recognized by someone. Thanks to my aunt's help, I have been able to take the first steps toward a new life. I have started looking for a new job. Last week, I applied for an entry-level position in the HR department of a local nonprofit organization and was hired. The salary is slightly higher than my current job and offers opportunities for career growth. Most importantly, the job is meaningful and aligns with my interests. Overall, I am cautiously optimistic as I continue to monitor my situation. I have also resumed hiking, a hobby I loved but hadn't had time for in years. I realize I have a long road ahead. It will take time to untangle the years of codependency and rebuild my life, but I am determined to proceed positively, no matter how difficult. Even when faced with challenges, I am learning to build trust in myself and my choices. As a result, significant changes have emerged that are markedly different from before. I was able to muster the necessary courage to make these changes. My deep interest in psychology has contributed to this. And for once, I want to experience being in a workplace where my efforts are recognized and appreciated. I am continuing with my community college classes, which are going well. Next year, I will earn my associate degree. Additionally, with the support from my aunt, I plan to transfer to a 4-year university to earn a bachelor's degree in psychology. Balancing school and work is not easy, but I am tackling it with more motivation than I have ever felt before. Thanks to living with Vanessa, I feel connected to the community, family, and friends. There are tough times, but I try not to dwell on them too much. With the help of my therapist, I am learning how to face these emotions and maintain proper boundaries. Sarah finally graduated and moved to another place to start her new job. She sent a message saying she wants me to keep doing well even in her absence. I did not reply to her message. It saddens me that our relationship could never be what it once was. I remember our close times, but I also recognize that I must accept the change. I hoped there would be an opportunity for us to talk in the future, but that surprisingly came sooner than expected. Before my sister moved out, we met up one more time. Upon arriving, I immediately considered leaving the room but ultimately decided to stay and listen to their side of the story. At first, it was quite tense, and the atmosphere was uncomfortable. My mother looked older and more exhausted than I remembered. I was briefly tormented by guilt, but then I remembered why I had decided to leave home in the first place. As the night went on, my mother gradually opened up and acknowledged the support I had provided her. She admitted that she had taken me for granted for many years and was afraid of completely losing me. She also shared that she is learning to prioritize herself in her future without being selfish. Challenges remain. I am still figuring out how to balance my own needs with compassion for others in a healthy way. I am working on forgiving my family without allowing myself to be used again. It's a process, and I know there will be good and bad days, but overall, I feel I am on the right path. I am proud of myself for having the courage to make these changes. 3 months after I left home, I received news from my Aunt Lynn that my mother had been hospitalized. She was rushed to emergency care due to a worsening autoimmune disease, and it was clear that she could no longer live alone. Since I had left, her condition had rapidly deteriorated. She often forgot to take her morning medication, struggled with rehabilitation on her own, and could not manage household tasks. She refused meal delivery services, saying she couldn't trust food prepared by others, and found it difficult to shop even at the nearby supermarket. Eventually, the refrigerator was left with only spoiled food, and she wasn't eating properly. After being hospitalized, she had no choice but to acknowledge the need for home care. She reluctantly accepted the help of a social worker and home health aides arranged by my aunt. During this time, I received an unexpected message from my sister Sarah. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you. Can we chat on the phone when you have time?" On the phone, she told me that our Aunt Lynn had shared with the whole family about my decade of dedication and the recent events from the onset of our mother's illness, my dropping out of college to work full-time, supporting her education, and her comments at the graduation party. Especially harsh criticism from our cousins Megan and Tiffany seemed too much for Sarah to bear. They were the same age and had been close friends with Sarah since their student days, so their words carried weight. How could you say such things about your sister, who sacrificed her youth for 10 years, calling her a loser? Sarah, how could you not appreciate that the enjoyable college life you had was all thanks to your sister? Facing criticism from relatives and the reality of our mother's hospitalization, Sarah seemed to deeply regret her actions. Rebecca, I'm really sorry, I wanted to be acknowledged in my new environment, and I was a complete fool, ashamed of my own origins. I deluded myself into thinking that the success I had was solely due to my own efforts, and not built on your sacrifices. I now understand how selfish and cruel that was. Sarah said she would fly back for the weekend. She wanted to think about what she could do regarding our mother's care and even offered to allocate part of her salary for our mother's caregiving expenses. I am not yet ready to fully accept Sarah's sudden apology. It will take time to determine whether her actions truly reflect her remorse, not just her words. Rebecca, I want to take some time off to meet and talk in person, Sarah proposed. After some thought, I agreed to meet her for a short time over the weekend. She returned. Waiting at the cafe, Sarah appeared, looking a bit thinner than before. Rebecca, I'm truly sorry. It was only after being pointed out by others that I realized the folly of my actions. Although we are apart, please let me support the caregiving costs with part of my monthly salary. Also, I'll use my long vacations to visit a few times a year to check on Mom. And I'll also keep in regular contact with her online. I didn't sense any deceit in Sarah's words, but based on past experiences, I couldn't immediately trust her. Would the promised financial support and regular contact truly continue? I plan to observe over time. As for our mother's condition, I occasionally receive updates through Aunt Lynn. Initially confused, she has gradually adapted to the caregiving service, and her relationship with the helpers is reportedly good. I'm not yet ready to meet her in person, but hearing that her life is getting back on track gives me some peace of mind. Aunt Lynn's actions have indeed sparked necessary changes in our family. However, only time will prove whether these changes are genuine. For now, I'm focusing on my studies and work, keeping a watchful eye from a distance to see if each family member fulfills their responsibilities. I have decided to walk my own path in life. While prioritizing my own happiness, I seek to find a proper balance with my family.